All right, everyone, welcome to the very first Smash Property Investing podcast. I am your host, Nick V, and with me today, I have my life partner and business partner, Akira. How you doing?
I'm good. Glad to be here.
Glad you could make it all the way down the hallway. No. We have a few things to get through today, and I kind of just want to jump straight into it. And we wanted to talk a little bit about the struggles of property investing, right? Because property investing is not easy. It's not for everyone. There is a lot of struggles along the way, and every
experience that firsthand today.
Absolutely, and we might talk about that in a little bit, but every level that you get to, meaning every property you get to, your second and third and fourth, there's just it presents new challenges that as investors we have to overcome. Definitely. And I was saying earlier when we had some challenges today that your ability to tackle and move forward through challenges is directly related to how much success that you're going to have as an investor and really just in life in general. So I thought best to go through that stuff today while it's red hot on our minds and the challenges that we've gone through, plus also speaking with clients that come through the business and also potential clients as well. There are many different struggles for all sorts of different people. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Perfect.
And let's maybe start with the sacrifice that a property investor has to make. Now, the sacrifice being before you even buy your very first property, most people are grinding, they're saving, tens and hundreds of thousands of dollars to buy their very first property. And that takes time, different time for everyone. So let's talk a little bit about your journey to start with and the sacrifices that you had to make, in your life to buy your very first investment property. Tell us a little bit about that.
Okay, I guess that's a really interesting question. For me, it was basically working two jobs. I started in my early 20s, so I'm not sure if it's anything similar to you, but they're not the same types of careers and salaries that you would earn now at this age. Yeah. So it essentially meant for me working two jobs, going to uni full time, to be able to save for that deposit. And it wasn't an overnight thing. It took at least 5 years to actually get to the point where I was ready to go to the bank or my broker and say, let's go. Yeah. So between saving and just the time between making the decision, it was a long, hard yard. So
you'd say for you was about 5 years of
research,
grinding it out, working, saving.
Agree.
To get that going.
How about you? Was it a similar timeline or was it a bit quicker?
No, for me actually it was a lot longer. I would say around the 10-year mark, if I'm honest, because I didn't make the best financial decisions as a young 20-year-old. As I've said many times, I love cars. I've got a passion for cars still to this day, from a little boy to now. Yep. And I went from playing with Matchbox cars and bringing them into real life and having real life cars to play with. And I didn't have money as a kid, right? So for me, I did what a lot of people do, and I went to the bank, asked for a personal loan so I could go out and buy the cars that I wanted to buy. And look, I've got no regrets because I had some great moments and great times in those things, but it did set me back a number of years in buying my very first property, because the way that my savings went, it was like I would save and then I would spend it on a holiday or a car or whatever. And then I would save. I lived.
Definitely.
And so I don't think I sacrificed any of the living side of it.
And it probably got you to where you are now because you experienced what you experienced.
Exactly right. Now I appreciate a lot more things in life, and the work that goes into getting it, I appreciate that a lot more. But as a lot of people, I bounced around from job to job in trying to find what worked and what didn't. For me, as you know, I worked so many different things. Worked at the council as a council worker. I worked in packaging. I worked in retail. I door knocking, selling subscriptions, working in call centers, until I, stumbled across and accidentally fell into a career in banking.
Right.
And, that's where I am now. But there was a lot of ups and downs in my journey. It definitely was not smooth sailing. And like I said, if I had have made things different decisions, I probably would have had, more properties a lot sooner. But
look,
that's the way it goes. That's
yeah,
life.
it's shoulda, woulda, coulda in those situations. But it's become one of those things where you're grateful for those experiences, so that now you can leverage all that experience and knowledge and go even harder at your journey.
100%. So in your, that 5-year build-up period, 20-something years old, working these different jobs, like, were you always connected to the mission of buying a property? Was that always at the forefront of your mind, or did it to and fro?
I'll be honest, no, it wasn't. It was something that ebbed and flowed quite often. Specifically, I think because of the age. It's one of those, at least for me, a lot of my circles were going out quite often, going on holidays, spending money on luxury items, those kind of things. So for me, it was quite hard to stay focused on that goal of saving for a deposit and working those jobs other than, going out and splurging or going on excessive holidays. But I think it's that burning desire to want something more for yourself.
Yeah.
And that kind of, I do whatever and then circle back to, what, I need to focus on something that's bigger or more important and is for tomorrow.
Yeah. Let's kind of stay on the theme of sacrifice, because we talked about like our journey on the lead up, to buying our very first property. Let's sort of talk about the sacrifice of actually owning properties, and not only owning, a property. I mean, we have a, sizable portfolio. What, if anything, would you say that we're sacrificing as property investors at the moment, or any time during your property ownership journey?
Look, it's being able, I think you mentioned that point, to be able to be flexible with stress and understand how to manage it. Property investing is definitely not for the faint-hearted. Things go wrong left, right, and center, but between trying to get your loan on time, maintenance issues on the properties, there's just so many variables, interest rates, whatever it might be. There's so many variables in this game that you need to be able to adapt and see things for what they are. That's what I think personally. And in terms of sacrifices within that journey, I would say, look, if I wasn't saving for that deposit and, being able to use today's money to my portfolio, I would essentially be going on holidays more often. I would be buying the things that I want to buy. But for me, it's understanding that some things take a bit of time, and if you do it properly, you can get it tenfold back tomorrow.
So what you're saying is, right now, if you weren't invested in property, there'd be more holidays. There'd be more of the, I guess maybe the nicer luxury things in life rather than so that's maybe a sacrifice that you could otherwise have.
Would it be? I bet yours is going to be cars now.
Look, it kind of goes without saying, right? Like if I didn't have a property portfolio and all the debt that needs to be repaid, I probably would have a sizable car collection, I would say. But that's kind of sacrificing that in the now for having an abundance of that in the later, which is going to be there. So so that's super interesting. So the struggles of property investing, not only the sacrifices in the early stages of before you even have a property, there's sacrifices that you need to make during the property investing journey
sometimes
as well. And look, I think maybe it might be worthwhile sharing with the audience in some of the stresses that we've had today. And so in my portfolio, our portfolio, we're in the process of settling on a property that we've had accepted down in Melbourne, and finance is due tomorrow. And I had the loan documents from the bank today, and the loan documents were wrong. So much so that the loan amount, there's a $60,000 discrepancy in the loan amount. And so then I had to go to my solicitor and say, hey, we need to extend the finance, which is easy enough to do, right? Another week. But the vendor, the seller, is well within their right to then charge 12% interest per day on however long the settlement is delayed. And when you work that out, that's probably about $700 we extended a week, which in the grand scheme of things, a minor inconvenience, but nonetheless a challenge that you need to deal with. And these things can kind of just come out of the blue, out of nowhere.
100%.
At the same time, I have a call from my property manager for another property in Brisbane, and the hot water is gone. And that's $2,500 to get the thing moved, replaced, because it sits under the house because it's in a really awkward spot. We have to move it, put a bigger water heater in because it's 80 litres. We need 125
and you
because
can't
of the
leave
rooms.
your tenant without hot water.
So again, a minor inconvenience, but these are just challenges that you kind of have to deal with as a property investor. And it's not easy. It's not a passive investment, which is super important to understand. And I think kind of tying into the sacrifice that you need to make is, there is going to be a time sink. There's going to be a level of stress that you need to be able to, handle.
The risk component.
Being able to solve problems like on the fly, I think is also, a huge component. And I think a lot of people would struggle with that. In the grand scheme of things, which...
Yeah, and I guess it comes down to understanding your level of risk appetite with any type of investing, whether it's shares, whether it's property, it doesn't really matter. But I think it's just your burning sensation to whether you want to get into it or not. And if that drive isn't there and the reason of why you're doing it isn't there, don't do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And the way that I kind of see it and what I was thinking about today, as I have for many years, is whenever there is challenges and it does get hard, I always go, all right, well, this challenge is preparing me for the next level.
Oh, yeah. There's what I mean? I think we're talking about Crash Bandicoot. It's like every level there's a...
It just gets harder and harder and harder.
But
the
good
rewards
problem.
get bigger and bigger and bigger as you go through.
That's exactly it. It's either you choose to do this and reap the benefits or you choose not to do it. And it's as simple
Put your money,
as that.
if you don't, if you want a true passive investment, go invest your money in government bonds or, put it in the stock market or whatever it is.
Yeah, and neither is right or wrong. It just depends
100%.
on you and your needs, essentially, right?
Absolutely right. So, look, the struggles of property investing, sacrifice, I think we've covered, the before the property and during the property investing phase. But let's sort of talk a little bit about more the information overload. All right, which I think is a true struggle of property investing. And this is kind of tying into, the clients and the people that we speak to through our business that just come to us and they're just confused. They're overwhelmed. They don't know which is right and which is wrong. And I can't blame them because, with, the power of social media and how good it can be.
And the internet.
And it can also be a detriment, especially in this property investing space where you log in every day. There's a new influencer, there's a new BA, there's a new broker, and they're all talking about their version of success. And look, there's a lot of great information out there, don't get me wrong, but there's also a lot of shit information out there too from people who haven't done it.
It's heartbreaking.
They're trying to make a quick buck. We've experienced something similar in the past week or so. From the clients that you've spoke to and just your experience, where we are right now in the space, talk to us a little bit about the information overload and maybe the confusion and things that people feel out there.
Look, I think, like you said, with it being such an abundant area with information, there's variables to everything and there's different ways and strategies to get to a goal. Look, I think with that in mind, everybody's circumstance is different. Yeah. So being genuinely honest with yourself and knowing that you have to have your own back first and foremost and do your research and due diligence, I think that's key and a fundamental aspect to getting into investing rather than just trusting someone you see straight off the bat. And that comes with asking questions and understanding what you are trying to achieve and why you're trying to achieve it. Yeah. So very simply, I think when I speak to, our clients, I think it's one of those things where it comes down to understanding why and what types of properties fit your needs. Because, you can have high-risk properties and you could have low-risk properties. It just depends what you're trying to get out of it. Yep. So being able to look at the issue and find a solution to it is key. And look, there's people who sell these shiny brochures, off the plan kind of things. look, for me, I don't agree with it because there's different reasons for it. If they're getting a cut, it's not to that investor's benefit. They probably get in the bottom end of the deal.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important to protect yourself as an investor and understand what you're getting into. And that just comes down to asking questions and smelling whether it smells rubbish or not.
Yeah.
I would say personally.
No, absolutely. And I think, the old saying, if it's sounds too good to be true, it probably is. And, I think you kind of touched on it there where, there's a lot of different ways to be successful in property.
Correct.
And I think, just with the overload of information that's out there, I think it's a great time to be a property investor.
Yes.
But to your point, you have to kind of pick and choose where you get your information from. And I think if you're consuming your information from one source, that's probably not ideal because you want to be looking at different perspectives.
Not have a biased opinion.
Exactly. Of all of the different, influencers that are out there and just listening to their message and then verifying what they're saying with other people. Building your team of people around you. And it will take time. I always used to hear, you've got to build a team. You've got to have this around. I'm like, what the fuck is that? What team is that? And I think for me, over time, you then start to, you might go through a couple of brokers before you find one that really
resonates
works for you.
Yeah.
You might go through, a couple of accountants.
Yeah.
You might speak to a few different solicitors. You might even have a BA on your team as well, right? But verifying the information that you think to be true with these, experts in their field, and they can kind of give you the right guidance as to, yes, this is a good strategy, or hey, no, you might want to think about this in this scenario, right? Because as I said, there's so many different ways to make money in property. There is no right or wrong. And you said it quite well. It just depends on your risk appetite, right? If you're willing to put it all and risk it all, hey, go for those high risk investments. You get the higher return. But for the average everyday people, and what we do, we are more the traditional, buy and hold type of property investors. That's worked well for me. It's worked well for you. And this is what we do with our investors that come through. But that doesn't mean to say that's the only way.
Correct.
There are so many other ways to do it, right? And again, it just comes down to you as an individual and what your risk appetite is as you move forward.
Completely agree with you. And that's what I find speaking to people and our clients. It's one of those things in really probing to what the outcome is that you're trying to achieve with property. Yeah.
Absolutely. I was going to touch on that as well. And in that, a lot of people, when we talk to them, they don't know what the goal is. And that's not a bad thing, right? But I think this is one of the biggest investments that you are going to make in your life, right?
Other than your home? Yeah.
Other than the home you live in, if you buy,
if you
principal
that.
place, other than a car, buying an investment property, it's huge money, right? And I think for a lot of people, it's important to know what's the reason? What are you doing it for? There's got to be an outcome that you're looking for. And I think when you know what the outcome is, it makes all of this other stuff so much easier because you can sift through the information overload and go, no, that's bullshit. That doesn't work for me. Or, hey, maybe this does.
Makes sense.
And then you can work towards actually getting to the outcome that you want.
Yeah, agree. And I think it enables you to make a decision point blank because with the overload, it becomes quite disheartening and overwhelming to even be able to choose the smallest details in the sense of who you want to work with, what area do you want to go in, what type of property do you want. So being able to know why allows you to make decisions.
And that's a great segue into the final point that we had here was making the decision. And it's easy in concept to go, I'm going to buy a property. But when it comes down to it and actually pulling the trigger and saying, yes, this is my offer. This is what we're sending through to the vendor. Let's do it. That decision's not easy.
Oh God, no.
So talk to us a little bit about your process in making decisions as it relates to property. Do you get cold feet
Jittery.
last minute? Do you get nervous? Do you think you're doing the wrong thing? Talk to us a little bit about that.
Look, for me, I think I try my best to always protect myself. That being doing the research behind the deal, understanding the numbers first and foremost, understanding the area that I'm investing in, of course, as well. But in terms of signing that contract and getting the deal done, look, I'll pray that day, try and really make sure I'm confident with my decision. But of course, you're always like, oh, is this right? Is this not right? But it's just simply weighing the pros and cons of it, understanding what you're getting yourself into. And that's how I try and settle myself so then I can pull the trigger and get it done.
So you're very much pros and cons, classic kind of person.
I'm a simple girl, yeah.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think for me, it's probably more so on the data side. Like, what do the numbers tell me? I think I'm, naturally a very analytical kind of person.
Definitely, I would say that about you.
Well, definitely. God damn.
It's a great thing.
So, yeah, I think, look, if the numbers work, and I'm not just talking about, the rental yield or the capital growth. I'm talking about the nuts and bolts of, all of the cash flow, how that all,
expenses,
translates not only now, but what does that look like in 5 years? What does it look like in 10 years? What does it look like in 30 years?
Yeah.
I'm very much into doing that forecasting over the long term, because right now it might hurt cash flow, for example, but in 5 years time, once rents have gone up, maybe the interest rates have changed, maybe it would look different, right?
That's an incredible point.
So for me, I'm very much, if the numbers work, after all, this is a numbers game, right? You're doing it for a number outcome, whether it's passive income or whatever it might be.
Net worth.
If the numbers work for me, then it works. But in saying that, I still, every single deal, even the deal we've just done recently, for me personally, I always have, like, I send off the offer and I'm like, shit, could I have knocked off like a couple of grand off it? Or maybe could I put a bit more of an enticing offer through? Every single time, and I've been doing this for years now, I always get that feeling.
It's probably a good thing. It's probably...
I think so, because it keeps you on your toes, right? And then the next deal, you're like, all right, I'm going to do this a little bit better. I'm going to deal with the agent maybe differently, or I'm going to put my offer in differently. So, yeah,
terms differently.
Maybe to your point, it is quite a good thing. So
Definitely.
Yeah.
It is a very interesting journey when you're putting in offers between the ebb and flow of knowing what's right, where you can knock off a couple K. But yeah, once you pull the trigger, I think, at least in my experience, it's one of those things where you can see not the growth and the outcome straight away, but 5 years down the line, you definitely know you made a good decision.
No, absolutely. And I think it's an important note to kind of wrap up on is, yes, you can do all of your due diligence. Yes, you can do all of the research. You can get jittery about your offer. But at the end of the day, if you're buying at the right time in the right market and you're buying the right property, it really isn't going to matter in the grand scheme of things. Like a couple of K
difference
today
in
what price is not
difference?
Really going to make a big difference in the grand scheme. When you're talking about a, decade, 20, 30 years period, these little numbers don't really matter. And I think ultimately it's about having the property in your name as soon as you possibly can, because as everybody says, it's not about timing the market. It's about time in the market, which is the most important thing, right? You want to just have the asset in your name as quickly as you possibly can, because that's where you will see the real benefit in the long term. And on that note, I think we might call it and finish up and wrap up our very first Smash Property Investing podcast, the SPI Insider, I think we will call it moving forward. But thanks for joining us today, and thanks for going through some of these answers. I'm sure the viewers will appreciate that as they watch this potentially on whatever podcast platform it might be. But we're going to be doing this every single week. I think there's going to be a lot of value that we can share as property investors to the wider audience, as well as, running a business as buyer's agents, helping, everyday people buy properties just as we have. So thanks again for joining us, and thanks everybody for tuning in and watching us on the SPI Insider podcast. Until next time, thanks for watching. We'll catch you soon.
Thank you.